I never thought the day would come when my own sister would kick me out of my own hotel mercilessly, in the middle of booming music and fake laughter from people who didn't even know who I was. "Get that homeless girl out of here, she's ruining the luxury vibe." That line, coming from Emily, the little sister I had protected throughout our childhood, hit me like a slap in front of the entire crowd. I stood frozen, not from shame, but from pain. And what hurt even more was realizing that everyone in my family knew about this beforehand, and no one stopped it. It was a September evening in Austin, Texas. The Red Cypress Hotel, the place I had poured 10 years of my youth into building from scratch, had turned into a stage for a pretentious birthday party. Emily walked into the grand lobby in a shimmering dress, arm wrapped around her new boyfriend, Chase, followed by a group of people dressed like they were attending the Met Gala instead of a 30th birthday bash. I was standing at the front desk, having just wrapped up a final employee check, when she looked straight at me like I was a stain on the marble floor. "Oh my God, who let a homeless woman wander into the hotel?" she laughed, then turned to a confused staff member. "You, please handle this situation for me. This is a private party. No one is allowed to ruin the vibe." I didn't bother to respond. I just looked at her, into those eyes that showed no recognition, no guilt at all. James, my event manager, saw what was happening from a distance and rushed over, his face going pale as he realized I was being insulted by my own client. "I'm so sorry, Miss Hannah, I didn't know when they got in. Do you want me to cancel the event right now?" I just shook my head. "No, let them continue," I said quietly. "I need to see how many more people in this mess knew and stayed silent." The answer came faster than I expected. In the lavishly decorated banquet room, filled with white orchids and golden ribbons, I saw my parents. My mother, Carol, wore the dress I had given her last year for their anniversary, and my father, Charles, held a glass of wine, chatting with Chase's family. They weren't even embarrassed to see me. They simply nodded, as if I were part of the staff. No one asked why I was standing in the corner, or apologized for what happened in the lobby. Emily stood in the center of the room, raising her champagne glass high. "Thank you everyone for coming, and especially thank you to my big sister, Hannah, who secretly sponsored the entire event tonight." The room erupted in applause. I stood still, numb. I had never agreed to pay a dime for this party, but the sight of my mother's pleased gaze, Emily's triumphant smile, and all that loud, empty clapping around me made everything crystal clear. They had planned it all, never asking if I agreed. They had simply assumed I would foot the bill. I pulled out my phone and texted Grace, the hotel's CFO. "Check all tonight's invoices. If there's any expense under my name that I haven't approved, freeze it immediately." Then I left the room. No one called me back, no one asked where I was going. That was the moment I knew I had never truly been family to them. I was just a walking wallet with a blood tie. 3 days after that humiliating party, I showed up at my parents' house in Lakewood, North Austin, responding to an invitation I knew was just a disguised family meeting. The 2-story red brick house looked the same as it had since my high school years, except for the once majestic oak tree in the yard. Now it had been cut down, replaced by a fake-looking white bench, as fake as the morals of the people inside. My mother, Carol, opened the door with a smile that felt more like a formality. "Hannah, you're here, come in, we've been waiting for you." Before I could say anything, she turned and walked away like I was a late food delivery. The dining table was set with porcelain dishes my mother only brought out for Christmas or serious discussions. I sat across from my father, Charles, who was tearing a piece of bread like it might save him from the conversation ahead. Emily sat slightly turned, one leg crossed, wearing a fitted emerald dress that showcased the figure she always bragged about, like her body was life's greatest achievement. "You know," Emily began, raising her red wine glass to eye level, "I think this 30th birthday should be massive, something on the scale of a reality TV show." I didn't respond. I simply looked at her, waiting for the performance. I've talked to some people in the event planning scene. There's a rooftop space at the Vela Blue Hotel, perfect view of the Pennybacker Bridge. We could have a suspended champagne bar, a live music stage, even a floral fountain. Emily paused for effect, then shrugged like it was nothing. I glanced at my mother, who remained silent. I turned to my father, who was still gnawing on his bread. The estimated cost, Emily continued, pulling a color-printed sheet from her purse, is around $95,000. But you know, if we want it truly iconic, we'll need at least 110 grand, including video production fees. And you want me to pay for that? I asked, my voice low but sharp enough to freeze the room. Emily raised an eyebrow. I mean, you own a hotel. You barely spend on yourself, you always wear black, you drive an old Honda. Me. I'm a content creator. I need to invest in my image. This is a career opportunity. I let out a dry laugh. Oh, I thought it was a birthday. My mother set her spoon down, the clang ringing like a warning bell. Emily's got a point. You're in a better position. What's the harm in helping your sister out just this once? I remember you once promised to always take care of the family. I looked at her. Take care of the family, or be an unlimited sponsor for meaningless shows. My father finally spoke. Let's not get too worked up, Hannah. We're just having a calm conversation here. He nodded. Calm. You all made plans to spend my money without asking me. And you call that calm? Emily let out a triumphant laugh. The laugh of someone who knew she was backed up by everyone in the room. Come on, don't make it sound like I'm mooching off you. I'm not asking for pocket money. This is an investment. When the party video goes live, I'll tag you, promote your hotel, it's a win-win. Win for who? I said, my heart pounding, voice tight. I lose $110,000, you get to be iconic. Great deal. My mother exhaled, a sound I had always mistaken for love, but which now felt like passive disapproval. Hannah, you're the responsible one. Emily, she's a dreamer. It's not her fault you were born practical. Sisters help each other. That's normal. That sentence sliced into me like a sharpened blade. I wasn't a person. I was stability, a walking ATM that showed up on time. I placed my napkin on the table. Sisters help each other when it's mutual. Not when one hands over a bill and says, you pay. If that's what this family calls love, then I'm sorry, I can't live in that definition. Emily's tone turned icy. You're serious. I looked her in the eye. Dead serious. No one spoke as I stood. No one stopped me as I walked toward the door. But just as my hand touched the doorknob, I heard my mother's voice, loud enough for me to catch. The more money that girl has, the colder she gets. I didn't turn around. I didn't bother to respond. In that moment, I realized that all these years, I had never been a daughter to them. I was Plan B. A backup who filled the gap between their delusions and their debts. I didn't think things could get worse than being viewed as a wallet by my own family, until I opened Instagram the next morning. A notification popped up on my phone at Emily Rose added 3 new stories. An old habit had me tapping to watch, even though some part of me knew it would hurt. First frame. Emily in a white limousine parked in front of the Vela Blue Hotel. Her hair in glamorous waves, bright red lips, raising a champagne glass like a queen on parade. Text read. When your sister drives a 2012 Civic but owns a 5-star hotel, can someone explain this? Below it, the rolling on the floor laughing emoji. Second clip. A shaky video taken from someone's car, my car, zooming in on me stepping out of my house. I was in an old coat, messy ponytail, holding a stack of documents. Emily had turned it into a split screen. On one side was me, and on the other side was her and her friends, glammed up in some lavishly decorated venue. The caption read, when you invest all your money into land, but forget to invest in your image. I didn't even scroll to read the comments. Seeing myself mocked so publicly was already enough of a punch to the gut. I set my phone on the table. My chest felt heavy like a weight pressing down on me. Grace, my finance assistant, texted me around 9. Did you see Emily's new story? Want me to do something? I typed a single word in reply. No. I buried myself in spreadsheets, or tried to, but the numbers blurred. Emily wanted more than money. She wanted to humiliate me, to turn me into a villain or a laughingstock or both. Part of me was used to being disregarded. But this time was different. This time, I could feel the pieces of me that still hoped for acceptance finally collapse. That night, I sat in my kitchen, the soft, warm light reflecting off the photo on the wall. Me and Emily as kids, each holding a melting popsicle, our smiles bright with innocence. I didn't pull it down. I just stared at it, making a list on a sheet of paper. Line 1. Did they ever love me or just love what I could offer? Line 2. If I lost everything, who would still be here? I had no answers yet, but at least I was finally asking questions. The next morning, I sent a message to my attorney. I need a full review of my personal assets. Make sure no one has signing authority on my behalf. Urgent. This wasn't about rage. It was about preparation. I used to think family ties were sacred, but now I knew that some relationships, if left unchecked, would destroy you from within. I refused to let that happen again. A few days later, I was in a meeting with the operations team on the 3rd floor of Red Cypress. Grace knocked gently, then peeked in with an apologetic expression. "Hannah, you have a visitor. Your mother. She's in the hallway. She said she won't wait in the lobby." My throat felt dry. "Send her in," I said, the rest of the meeting staff quickly gathering their notes to leave. Moments later, my mother entered like she owned the place, wearing a long beige coat and carrying an oversized coach purse on her arm. "Your girl Grace is very polite," she remarked, placing her bag on the chair across from me, then pulling out a small plastic container. "I brought your favorite banana bread, still the same recipe with a touch of cinnamon, good for digestion." I didn't reach for the container. I didn't smile. "What brings you here, Mom?" She took a cream envelope out of her purse and set it on the table. "Emily's documents," she said breezily. "I thought you should look them over." Inside the envelope, I found color-printed pages from an event planning company called Valeria Events. The top read, "Emily's 30th birthday celebration." Halfway down the second page, in bold text highlighted with pink marker, was a line that made my stomach churn. "Primary sponsor, Hannah Blake, $112,500, confirmed." I raised my eyes. Confirmed by who, exactly? My mother's gaze didn't waver. "Emily can't afford this. Your father and I are on retirement income. You're the only one who can help." "Help?" I repeated. "You're calling forcing me to pay over $100,000 for an influencer stunt help?" She sighed, smoothing the sleeve of her coat. "Don't be so dramatic, Hannah. No one is forcing you. We believed you understood your responsibility." "Responsibility," I echoed. My voice was colder than ice. "Why is it always me? Emily has hands, a brain, thousands of followers. Why can't she handle her own bills?" My mother's expression didn't soften. "You're the successful one, Hannah, the stable one. Eldest. Just this once, let Emily have her moment. You've always been backstage, supporting everyone. What's so different now?" I stood, needing space, pacing to the window. "What's different?" No one asked if I agreed. No one cared how I felt. You just assumed and sent me the bill. "How is that fair?" "It's not about fairness," she said, still calm in a way that felt like a backhanded slap. "It's about necessity. You've been blessed with success, so share it." I turned, walked to the small fridge, opened the freezer door. I took the container of banana bread from the table and placed it inside. She stared, perplexed. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Putting it in the freezer," I said softly. "Where things that numb feelings belong." Then I turned to her, looking directly into her eyes. "I'm not signing anything. I'm not paying a dime. No plans get executed without my approval. You can tell Valeria Events to talk to my lawyer. Otherwise, don't come here with more plans. I'm not a heartbeat-pounding wallet." She took a slow breath, then stood, adjusting the collar of her coat. "You've become so hard, Hannah." He nodded. "Thank you for noticing." Without another word, my mother left the room. I stood in the sudden quiet, sunlight shining across the documents. I didn't rip them up. I simply tucked them into the drawer labeled with a red marker. Evidence. No more illusions. No more negotiations. This was business. Wednesday morning, as I reviewed a rooftop maintenance report, Grace appeared, her face taut. She held a thick, sealed envelope. "Express delivery from Verity Planning Group," she explained, setting it on my desk like it was dangerous. Attached label says, "Urgent. Hannah Blake. Personal and financial." Opened it. Inside was a full booking contract from the Aria Sky Lounge, that luxury rooftop venue downtown known for hosting millionaires' wedding receptions. Gold-embossed letters, perfumed paper. Page 5 read, "If the primary party fails to make payment, the financial guarantor will assume full legal responsibility." Below that, my name was typed out neatly. Financial guarantor, Hannah Blake. I almost laughed. No phone call, no text. They simply slapped my name on the guarantee and mailed it to me, believing I'd just sign. That old reflex, the one that kept me quiet for the sake of peace, tried to kick in, but I pushed it aside. I opened a drawer, set the contract inside, locked it with a small key. "I'm not signing," I told Grace calmly. "Figured you'd say that," she answered with a sympathetic nod. "Want me to shred it?" I shook my head. "No, keep it. Label it, Financial Abuse, Step 1. I scanned each page on my office machine, saving digital copies into a new folder. Emily Legal Evidence. Subfolders labeled Unauthorized Emails, Defamation and Personal Attacks, Staff Witness Statements, and Event Documents. My hands were steady, my heartbeat even. I was no longer the crying daughter who shut her bedroom door at night. I was the CEO of an $8 million enterprise, and now I handled my family like a high-risk partner. I fired off a concise email to the hotel's legal team. Subject: Deny all unverified personal submissions message. We do not accept any contracts, agreements, or financial proposals submitted by third parties on behalf of Hannah Blake unless expressly confirmed in writing and verified by Hannah Blake. All other requests are to be denied and forwarded directly to legal. Hannah B. No text to Emily, no calls. Let her wonder. Let her try to climb the wall of my silence, because I wasn't budging. 3 days later, I was in my office, going over expansion plans for a second hotel in Dallas. That's when Grace knocked, tablet in hand. Her face tinged with a mix of exasperation and dark amusement. "You'll want to see this." She tapped the screen. Live feed from the lobby security camera. Emily was back. This time she wasn't alone. Chase and his parents, the Daltons' large-scale real estate investors from Houston, walked in with the airs of VIP guests who believed they owned the place. Emily led them around, pointing at the ornate chandeliers, the marble staircase, the plush seating arrangement in the waiting area. The footnote across the camera's data read, "Event, Emily's 30th birthday party, 6 p.m., Red Cypress Grand Ballroom." "What?" I said, eyes narrowing. She booked the space through a third-party site, claiming to be a brand ambassador for Red Cypress. She even has half the staff convinced you approved it, but there's no signature from you on any official paperwork. I took a deep breath. Emily had outdone herself. She figured if she planned the party last minute, I wouldn't dare pull the plug for fear of negative publicity. But she forgot that I was done playing the docile older sister. I walked to the top of the main staircase and paused. From there I could see the entire lobby. My reflection in the polished railing, my hair pinned in a tidy chignon, my navy blue suit jacket neat and precise. I was no longer the timid wallflower. I was about to remind them exactly who owned Red Cypress. I stepped down, each heel click echoing across the glossy floor. Emily was mid-sentence, boasting to the Daltons about how she'd personally designed the place. Her voice halted the moment she saw me, my presence cutting through her performance like a blade. "Welcome to Red Cypress," I said, my voice clear and firm. "I'm Hannah Blake, founder and CEO of this establishment. Can I help you find something, Emily?" She gaped for a second, words failing her. Mr. and Mrs. Dalton exchanged glances, brows knitted in confusion. "You're the owner?" Mrs. Dalton asked pointedly. I descended another step. "Yes, from the very first blueprint to the final chandelier, every inch." Emily tried to regain composure. Oh, Hannah and we're family, and this is just a small celebration. It's already in the system, so. Cut her off. Actually, no. There is no contract in the system. We do not sanction unauthorized events, especially not those that list me as a financial sponsor without my consent. The Daltons turned sharply to Emily. Tension thick enough to cut. Emily's fiancé, Chase, cleared his throat. We were under the impression everything was approved. It wasn't, I replied. Grace, my assistant, will gladly escort you to the correct event space if you decide to book properly with our standard corporate rates. We don't offer freebies, not even for. I allowed a slight pause, looking Emily in the eyes. Family. Mr. Dalton nodded slowly, his expression reflecting professional respect. I appreciate transparency, Ms. Blake. That's something I value in business. Chase, looking sheepish, murmured. I'm sorry I must have misunderstood Emily's arrangement. Emily pressed her lips together, face paling. Hannah, please, can we talk about this in private? I turned away. Grace, show them the rooftop lounge. If they'd like to book and pay the deposit properly, we can discuss. Otherwise, I'll have security escort them out. And with that, I left Emily's entire group standing there, stunned. That evening I drove home in silence. No music, just the hum of the car engine. I pulled into my driveway and sat for a moment, thinking of how far I'd come. Once, I would have let Emily walk all over me. I'd have handed her a credit card, apologized for any inconvenience. Now I was done. Done hoping she'd value me. Done expecting my parents to see my side. Done living in illusions. I stepped inside my house, flicked on the kitchen light. The quiet was a relief. I poured myself a cup of herbal tea, let the steam rise and calm my nerves. Then my phone rang. Caller ID, Dad. I let it ring a few times, debating before I picked up. Hey, Dad. He sighed, relief evident in his voice. Hannah, we need to talk about what happened today. Which part? Asked, keeping my tone neutral. That Emily tried to hijack my hotel for a lavish party, or that I refused to let her. She's upset, Hannah. She's your sister, he began. Upset, I repeated, feeling my temper flare. Dad, I was humiliated in my own hotel, lied about, forced into unapproved contracts. And you say Emily is upset. What about me? Look, I get it, but can't we handle this peacefully? He pleaded. We're a family. Sometimes we have to sacrifice a bit. I let out a slow breath. Dad, I spent my entire life sacrificing. All I ever wanted was to be seen, to be loved for who I am, not for the money in my account. I'm done enabling Emily's entitlement. He sounded tired. So, that's it. You're just walking away. No, I said calmly. I'm re-establishing the terms of this relationship. If Emily wants a genuine bond, it has to be built on respect, not manipulation. Silence. Then he murmured, Your mother and we just don't want the family to fall apart. Maybe it already has, I said gently. And maybe that's okay if it means I can finally breathe. I hung up, tears threatening, but I blinked them back. I refused to cry for people who refused to cherish me. 2 weeks passed without a peep from Emily or my parents. I expected an explosion, some dramatic confrontation, but it was radio silence. Strangely, it felt good. For the first time, I was living my life without bracing myself for another onslaught of demands. I threw myself into work at Red Cypress, finalizing plans for a second location in San Antonio, and examining opportunities for a new eco-friendly wing in the main Austin hotel. Our bookings were up, ironically fueled by the social media drama Emily had unleashed. Many people who saw her humiliating videos had sided with me. They admired how I carried myself, refusing to stoop to her level. One afternoon, Grace came rushing into my office with a grin. You'll never guess who just emailed us. I raised a brow. Who? She tapped her tablet, reading aloud. Dalton Enterprises. They're impressed by Red Cypress brand integrity and want to discuss potential investment in a boutique wing. Blink. The same Daltons who came in with Emily. Grace nodded, handing me the tablet. Looks like they were impressed by your refusal to be strong-armed, ironically enough. In a twist of fate, Emily's attempted sabotage led to one of my biggest potential partnerships. I felt a flicker of gratitude for the chaos she'd caused. Strange how life worked. That night, I drove through West Austin, passing old haunts. The neon signs of a pizza place I used to frequent, the cozy library where I studied endless nights, the tiny studio apartment where I'd lived when Red Cypress was just a daydream. Everything felt different, like it belonged to someone else's memory. I parked outside the building that now housed a bakery instead of my old studio. Inside, people lined up for pastries. I thought about the nights I fell asleep on a thin mattress with a flickering lamp, bills piling up, determined to build a future no one believed in. Not even my family. Yet here I was living it. And no one could take that away. A few days later, an unexpected call came in from Emily. For a moment I debated ignoring it. But curiosity got the better of me. Hannah. Her voice was small, uncertain. Hey, I said cautiously. There was a pause. Look, can we meet somewhere for coffee or something? I want to talk. My first instinct was suspicion. But something about her tone didn't sound like the usual bravado. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a small cafe near the river. I arrived first. The place was cozy, with warm lights and wooden tables. A few minutes later, Emily walked in, no entourage, no fancy outfit, just jeans and a sweater. Her hair was in a simple ponytail, face free of makeup. She ordered a latte, then sat across from me. Neither of us spoke at first. Finally, she sighed. I messed up. I said nothing, letting her continue. She fidgeted with her cup, not meeting my eyes. At first it was just for fun, making jokes. People on social media love that stuff, sibling banter, drama. But it got out of control, and I didn't see it. I didn't offer any comforting words. I simply studied her. Then, when you cut off the money, I panicked, she admitted quietly. I've built a whole brand around my lifestyle, but there's not as much real income as I pretend. I had deals lined up that all depended on me throwing these big parties, making content. I was desperate. Instead of being honest, I lashed out. I sipped my iced coffee. Emily, you didn't just lash out. You humiliated me publicly. Tried to force me into signing massive bills. You were cruel. Tears welled in her eyes, but she kept looking down. I know. And at first I told myself it was your fault, that you were being selfish, but I see now you were just finally standing up for yourself. I guess, deep down, I hated that you had it all together while I struggled to fake it. Her words were raw, a far cry from the usual self-centeredness. I don't have it all together, I clarified gently. I just work hard and I'm not afraid to sacrifice. But I can't sacrifice for you anymore when all you do is take. She nodded, wiping her cheek. I'm sorry. I know words aren't enough. I do love you, I do. But I've acted like your enemy. I let out a breath, releasing some of the tension in my shoulders. What do you want from me now, Emily? She swallowed. I just want to start over. Or at least, figure out how to have a relationship without it being about money. I studied her face for signs of manipulation, but all I saw was exhaustion and a flicker of sincerity. That's a long road, I said. A single apology won't fix years of entitlement, or the way you tried to tear me down for social media clout. I know, she whispered. But I want to try. I was thinking, maybe I should get a real job or at least learn some business basics. Chase and I aren't even engaged anymore. She choked on the words. He left after the Dalton fiasco. Said I was toxic. I wasn't entirely surprised. I'm sorry that happened, I offered, and I meant it. Because heartbreak was heartbreak, no matter the mistakes. We sat there a little longer, not quite reconciled, but not at each other's throats either. Finally, Emily looked up. Would you consider letting me volunteer at the hotel? To learn from the ground up. Volunteer. He echoed, uncertain. Work the front desk, housekeeping, shadow the staff. Actually see how a business runs. She nodded slowly. I don't want a handout. I want to understand why you sacrificed so much for Red Cypress, and maybe prove that I can contribute something too. I studied her for a long moment. Was she serious? Or was this another ploy? My gut told me to be cautious, but there was a tiny part of me that wanted to give her a chance. I'll think about it, I said. But there are going to be rules. Real work hours, no social media stunts. Her eyes flickered with hope. Deal. We exchanged a fragile smile. Then I stood. Thanks for meeting me. Without another word, we parted ways. I felt a swirl of emotions. Relief, worry, cautious optimism. Part of me feared being burned yet again. But maybe I needed to see if Emily truly wanted redemption. A week later, Emily showed up at Red Cypress. She wore simple black slacks and a button-down shirt. Her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. Grace eyed her warily at first, but I explained Emily was going to shadow some staff. No VIP treatment. We put her on an early morning rotation. Housekeeping for an hour, front desk check-ins, a lunch break, then shadowing our event coordinator for a small corporate party. Emily was shocked at how busy and detail-oriented the work was. By day 3, she was exhausted, but she kept showing up. One morning, I passed by a hallway where she was scrubbing a particularly stubborn stain on the carpet. A couple of guests recognized her from social media, took photos and posted them. Emily Rose is working housekeeping. So random but kinda love it, one caption read. Instead of turning it into an ego boost, Emily asked them politely not to disturb the workflow. Grace gave me updates. Emily was punctual, asked questions, made a few mistakes but apologized earnestly. It was a start. My parents, on the other hand, bombarded me with texts about how I was exploiting Emily by making her do manual labor. I responded once, clarifying that Emily volunteered. When they kept pushing, I simply stopped replying. I let them stew, no longer concerned about their opinions on every aspect of my life. Meanwhile, the Dalton partnership continued to flourish. They booked corporate retreats, holiday events, and referred other businesses. I was busy finalizing architecture plans for a second property. In quiet moments, I couldn't help but marvel at the irony. Emily's attempt to sabotage me had propelled my business forward in ways I never saw coming. Over the next month, Emily's mini-internship at the hotel became a steady routine. She learned to greet guests, handle minor scheduling, and she even helped the housekeeping supervisor track inventory. We had our share of tense moments, like the time she accidentally posted a behind-the-scenes photo of the staff break room on social media, but it was harmless enough, and she apologized profusely when I confronted her. You're actually trying, I said one evening, watching her wipe down the lounge tables. I'm surprised. She lowered her gaze. I realized how shallow I was. I don't want to be that person anymore. People can change, I nodded. If they want to. As the weeks turned into a couple of months, I noticed Emily's social media content shift. Gone were the flashy parties and passive-aggressive jabs at me. Instead, she posted short clips about hotel life, praising the staff's hard work, or highlighting interesting facts about the hospitality industry. She even did a vlog about budgeting tips she was learning, crediting me for inspiring her. Her follower count dipped at first. People who wanted drama left. But new followers trickled in, curious about her transformation. One weekend afternoon, I found her in the courtyard, showing a group of guests where they could sit and enjoy the fountain. She was polite, patient, and seemed genuinely excited to help. I caught myself smiling. She noticed me and ambled over. Hey, she said, exhaling. So, I was thinking, the courtyard is kind of underutilized. What if we do weekend coffee tastings or small acoustic music nights here? I was taken aback. It was actually a decent idea for boosting guest experience. That's not bad, I admitted. James, the event coordinator, said he could help set something up if you approve, she added quickly. Send me the proposal, I said, trying not to sound too encouraging. Still, the mere fact that Emily was showing initiative in a positive way was refreshing. The next day, she gave me a typed summary of her courtyard idea. including costs, potential local musicians, and even a small donation box for local charities. I read it, impressed by the detail. Looking up, I saw her standing anxiously, wringing her hands. "Emily, this is..." I hesitated. "It's good. Let's try a pilot event next Saturday." She brightened, eyes sparkling like the girl I remembered from childhood, the one who used to dance around the living room without a care. "Really? Really?" I confirmed. She practically jumped with excitement, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of sisterly warmth I hadn't felt in years. As the pilot event approached, I couldn't help but feel a nervous twinge. I watched Emily hustle with the staff, checking the setup, ordering fresh flowers, confirming the local singer's arrival. She personally taste-tested the coffee blends. Saturday afternoon arrived under a bright Texas sun, and the courtyard buzzed with a gentle crowd of hotel guests and locals who stumbled in. Soft acoustic tunes floated in the air. People sampled coffees and pastries, chatting at small tables around the fountain. I stood at the edge, arms crossed, observing. Emily circled from table to table, asking if everyone was comfortable, if they needed anything. She even had a tip jar labeled "Support our local artists." All proceeds going to the musician. The vibe was relaxed, warm. A success in every sense. As the event wrapped, Emily approached me with a hesitant smile. "So, what do you think?" "Guests seemed happy," I said simply. "We've had good feedback so far." She exhaled in relief. "Thank you for trusting me. I know it's going to take more than one good idea to make up for everything I did." "One good idea plus consistent effort," I clarified. She nodded. "I'm not stopping." That evening, after the courtyard event ended, I was finishing up final checks around the hotel when I spotted my parents stepping off the elevator. My mother, Carol, wore a concerned frown, and my father, Charles, gave me a small nod. Emily stood behind them, wringing her hands. "Mom, Dad," I greeted curtly. "What brings you here?" My mother pursed her lips. "We came to see for ourselves this courtyard event Emily's been raving about." I raised an eyebrow. "It just ended, actually. You missed it." They glanced around at the lingering guests. Emily tried to speak. "Mom, Dad, if you'd come an hour earlier, you would have seen." Carol cut her off. "We were delayed." My father cleared his throat. "We also wanted to talk to Hannah, as a family." I stiffened. "We can talk in my office if you like." They nodded, and we made our way to my office on the 5th floor, a space with a large window overlooking the city lights. Emily trailed behind, quietly fidgeting. My mother was the first to break the silence, her voice oddly gentle. "Emily's been telling us how you've allowed her to work here to learn." I leaned back in my chair. "Yes, it's an internship of sorts." My father cleared his throat again. We're trying to understand everything that happened." Emily explained she was out of line. "And we want to apologize." I studied them both. My mother looked uncharacteristically contrite, fiddling with the clasp of her purse. "We got used to you always bailing us out," she admitted. "Your father and we never questioned whether it was fair. We just assumed that's what family does, but we didn't see how much we were hurting you." My father spoke quietly. "It wasn't right, Hannah. You've done so much and we ignored how you felt. We let Emily push you too far. We're sorry." It felt surreal hearing these words I had dreamed of for years but never expected. I didn't move, but my heartbeat thrummed in my chest. Emily stood in the corner, blinking back tears. I inhaled, then exhaled slowly. "Thank you for saying that. But an apology doesn't magically erase everything. Have boundaries now. I'm not going to be the family bank or the scapegoat for everyone's problems." My mother nodded, tears pooling in her eyes. "We understand. We want to do better. It's time we all move forward in a healthier way." For a moment no one spoke. The weight of years of mistakes and pain hung thick in the air. Then Emily came forward. "I'm sorry," she said again, voice trembling. "I know it'll take time to rebuild trust." I felt an unexpected warmth in my chest, a cautious hope. Time and consistent actions, I stressed. Not just words. They all nodded, a shared understanding passing among us. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation, but it was a start, an opening in a wall that had been sealed for too long. Emily brought out a small cake afterward, topped with fresh strawberries. She cleared her throat nervously. I just wanted to say thank you, Hannah, for everything you've done for this family. And for me, even when I treated you horribly. I know it wasn't fair. I can't change the past, but I promise I'll do everything in my power to be someone you can be proud to call sister. My throat tightened, emotions swirling. I glanced at my parents, who gazed back with soft, tearful smiles. Then I looked at Emily, no longer the petty, entitled influencer I once resented. She was someone learning to stand on her own, forging a new identity grounded in humility and respect. I appreciate that, I replied, my voice catching. And I'm proud of you too. In that moment, I realized that while not all families find their way back to each other, ours was trying. And maybe that attempt alone was enough for hope. As the night wrapped up, my parents insisted I take some leftovers. I agreed, smiling to myself at this small gesture of normalcy. Something so simple yet profoundly meaningful after all the turmoil we had been through. When I walked outside into the mild Texas evening, the stars glowing above, I paused by my car, taking in a deep breath of the cool air. Life wasn't perfect. There were still issues, old scars, and unspoken hurts. But we were healing step by tentative step. I found the strength to set boundaries, stand up for myself, and in doing so, I'd made room for actual respect and authentic love. No more illusions, no more being used. Just me, Hannah Blake, existing as a whole person, capable of saying no, capable of forgiving, and capable of moving on. In that sense, I had my happy ending. Not because I destroyed my family or because they destroyed me, but because I found my own worth, and in doing so, opened the door for a healthier family dynamic. One founded on respect rather than guilt or obligation. For the first time I felt free, walking forward into a future that was mine to shape, with or without them. And I knew deep down from this point on I would never lose myself again. I hope Hannah's journey resonates with anyone who's ever felt used, overlooked, or manipulated by the people they were supposed to trust the most. Sometimes you have to risk conflict to protect your peace. Sometimes the strongest love is the one that says, I respect myself enough to walk away from what's toxic. And when others realize you mean it, that's when real change can happen. After all, the best revenge is living a life that's true to you, surrounded by the people who choose to grow alongside you. May you find the courage to stand your ground, set boundaries, and if the door to reconciliation opens, step through it on your own terms. Because a happy ending isn't about destroying enemies or dancing on their defeat. It's about creating a life where you can breathe freely, heal old wounds, and discover that family, if they're willing to learn, can become something worth fighting for again. And in the end, that's exactly what Hannah found. A new definition of family, built on honesty, mutual respect, and a love that finally felt real. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more jaw-dropping tales, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. Your support means everything.